What's the latest, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the In the Paint Show presented by Ballislife. Episode 113, a special episode. We're going to talk McDonald's All-American selections. Obviously, the whole country, the whole grassroots community is talking about it. Here with my co-hosts, Umana and Horace Neysmith. Appreciate you guys jumping on.
Good afternoon. Appreciate you having us. I'm ready to get started, man. It's always a good time to talk about McDonald's, and what better time to do it than right now, the day of.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so much chatter. There's always so much buildup, and you look online and social media, and people are just the anticipation. And then when the picks come out, you know, mostly there's not that much surprise, you know. But
right,
once in a while, you'll have a year where there's a little bit of a shock pick. I don't really think we had that too much this year. You know, and did anything off firsthand before we talk about who they are? Did anything really surprise you guys?
No, nothing. Nothing really surprised me. I was actually surprised, even though we have some guys out in Texas that are in other schools, but to have about 4 or 5 guys, I believe, in there, that was like, oh, you know, that was interesting. That was interesting to see that. You know, I don't know what's the last time we had. Been a minute since we had 5 guys from the area.
Yeah,
and for me, what stood out was Amari Bailey being hurt and being out of pocket for a while. And I thought there was some criteria around playing X number of games. I want to say 50%. And him being out of pocket and making it was a surprise to me.
Gotcha. Yeah, let's pull this up as we talk about the McDonald's All-Americans. And here's the list here. 2022 All-Americans: Nick Smith, Derek Lively going to Duke, Mari Bailey, who you just mentioned, Horace, Keontae George, a Texas native at IMG at Baylor, Dariq Whitehead at Montverde Academy going to Duke, Anthony Black from Duncanville, undecided, Adam Bona, the monster from Prolific Prep going to UCLA. He plays so hard. Grady Dick from Sunrise Christian, #1 team in the country, going to Kansas, staying home. Jaden Bradley, point guard, IMG Academy, going to Alabama. Chris Livingston, obviously a great wing player, going to Kentucky from Oak Hill. Brandon Miller, also going to Alabama. Then we got J.J. Phillips going to LSU at a Link Academy. Mark Mitchell's had a good senior year, going to Duke. M.J. Rice, the strong wing, going to Kansas at a Prolific Prep. J.J. Starling, the guard from Lalamere, going to Notre Dame. Dylan Mitchell going to Texas. Dylan Mitchell's having a great season as well. Ontario Morris going to Texas as well, joining Dylan Mitchell. Cason Wallace going to Kentucky, guard. Jarris Walker, who seems like he's been in high school for 5 years, 6 or 6 years.
Right.
That's done well. He's going to Houston. What a great pickup for Calvin Sampson. Cam Whitmore going to Villanova. He's from the DMV area. Kajani Wright, the big man out west, going to USC. From Sierra Canyon, Khalil Ware, North Little Rock, going to Oregon. Jordan Walsh, the second player from Link Academy, going to Arkansas. And Ernest Udo going to Kansas. So there's your 2022 McDonald's All-Americans. And guys, as we looked at that list, you know, we got 3 guys who are going to Duke. And I think we have one other school with 3 guys, Kansas. Did any of us, where the guys are going, surprise you?
Well, I tell you what was really, it's a surprise, right? Because whenever we think about SEC, we think about SEC football. SEC has 7, what is it? 2, 4, 6, 7 McDonald's All-Americans. And that's not including Texas, which is going to be in the SEC in 2025. That was, to me, that's something to talk about.
Yeah. I noticed 2 guys from Alabama right away. That has never happened before. Now, again, is that obviously they're doing a good job down there with the crew recruits they have. And, you know, somebody told me that watches college basketball. He doesn't really watch. He's a buddy of mine, and he doesn't really follow the high school scene too much. But he goes, man, I watch SEC games all the time. They're really good. Like the level, the pageantry and just the intensity of like LSU versus Kentucky or Alabama versus Kentucky,
Tennessee.
whatever matchup there is, the games just seem good.
Right.
Now,
No,
it's because of TV or just because they've increased their recruiting and they want to battle the top conferences.
I think it's increasing the recruiting. I just think the talent level just you definitely see it like every conference game that I've watched. It's just been a high level. Like we talked about Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, even Texas A&M and Kentucky was a big time game. There's just high level basketball in the SEC right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And
I'm down here in SEC country, man, and guess what? Auburn didn't have one. The best team in the conference didn't have one.
Yeah, I think people are going to be really interesting to see how Auburn does in this tournament. Obviously, they have a guy who may be the number one pick. Getting off the topic a little bit, what do you guys think about that? You think they're riding his back and can go far, or do you think they're just number one now?
I think they got a chance.
Yeah, Donnie.
Oh, my bad.
No, you good.
I think they got a chance. I mean, Auburn's talented front. The backcourt's been playing really well. The front court, especially with Kessler and Smith. I mean, I think they got good depth, good length. They're playing hard. They're playing together. I think they're a team that can make a Final Four run, make it really interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. Not until the 2002 Maryland team with Juan Dixon in that group. I think they had Steve Blake. That was the first year after the McDonald's game was created in 1977 that there wasn't a McDonald's All-American on a national championship roster. And I think since then it might have happened one more time, but it's only happened like 2 times in 40 years. So obviously the guys who make this game, like you said, are going to help a team win the championship more than, 98% of the time or whatever. It's only 2 times in 40 years, whatever the math on that is. So very interesting. We kind of talked about the high line. Wanted to break down a little bit more breakdown. Nike, we break it down by kind of like the grassroots circuit or by the circuit they play on. I know, Ani, you pay attention to this a lot. We came up with some numbers: 11 for Nike, 7 for Adidas, 3 for UAA, the Under Armour, 2 UAA Rise, and 1 independent. Ani, who's the independent? And just kind of give me your reaction to those numbers of the 24.
First, the independent is Anthony Black, who's I think was the only one that was undecided on that list.
List.
Yeah, and then we talked about in the previous episodes about just his situation, how UIL said no to him at Duncanville for playing, and how he's fighting now. Now he's playing at Duncanville, and he's had a good season. At one point, they're number 1 in the country. So Anthony Black, a 6'7" guard, primary plays on the ball a lot, athletic. Good vision as good vision, really excels in pick and roll, athletic, can guard multiple spots. Just been a winner, even in the summer with 3D Empire. I know they won the NY2LA championship, and they beat a lot of circuit teams during the summer. So Anthony Black has just been, winning and producing the summer. This past summer was huge, and, going to Duncanville, I think they're number 2 right now in the current ranking. So that's that's the only independent, but for sure, I think he deserves it just with productivity and winning.
Yeah, that makes sense. He definitely deserves it. Like you mentioned, Horace, you have any thoughts on those numbers? The 11, 7 Adidas, 1 independent, and I guess the UAA Rise and UAA. Let's count it as 5, unless we want to break that down.
Yeah, it's par for the course, right? So. The rich get richer, whether it's a school situation, Duke of Kentucky, or
Sure.
The circuit situation with Nike, Under Armour, and Adidas. They do a good job, marketing their grassroots programs. So it's no surprise that those kids play in those environments because they want to play against the best, and that's where the best are.
Yeah. I would think even the numbers are getting a little more balanced. I think a few years ago, if I remember the chatter on Twitter, like Nike had 1 year where they had 19 or 20, maybe even 21. That was only 2, 3, probably right before the pandemic. So those numbers have even balanced out a little bit more, which is good. Competition breeds better basketball. You would assume, better product. If you slack, somebody's there to pick up the pieces. If one shoe company slacks, another shoe company is going to snatch a good player up. That's just the way it works.
That's the only thing I would have, to have a kid play Adidas or Under Armour for 3 years, 4 years, and the 1 year he plays with Nike, that last year, to me, it's like, it's kind of one of those gray areas to me.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Guys can jump
and
around.
of course, it's like a AAU program. They'll say a kid played for them if he played 2 tournaments.
Right. They play 1 game.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, why develop when you can let somebody else spend gas money, spend flights, spend hotel rooms, and then you just pick him up after he's already established himself as one of the top players? I mean,
Nike has done that when they sign, Zion and guys like that, and because why? Because they can get who they want at the end of the day, right?
Right. Yeah.
So to your point, though, I think it has evened out.
Yeah, it seems like it's even out a little bit more to have 7 guys from Adidas. That's again, competition breeds better players, breeds better products. So that's a good thing. I think overall for the health of the whole industry and the whole circuit. Let's talk a little bit about the NIBC and their dominance and what I saw. And that's more from the team perspective. 9 players I'm counting from those NIBC clubs who play in the league now. Bradley, Walker, and Keontae George from IMG. Grady, Dick, and Mitchell from Sunrise. Whitehead and Mitchell from Montverde. JJ Starling from La Lemire, and Chris Livingston from Oak Hill. Ani, go first. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you see 9 guys from that, conference, and basically, another, whatever it is, the number from the rest of the country?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too surprising. Like we talked about, the NIBC's kind of become like the SEC of high school basketball, especially in the top, at its top tier when you talk about tier 1 and tier 2 teams. So seeing 9 guys from there most definitely can make sense, and those 9 guys that deserve it too. I didn't think there was any questionable guys out of that 9. I think there was 9 guys that have been having fantastic seasons so far and had really good summers. So yeah, it wasn't too surprising. I mean NIBC, especially when you talk Oak Hill, who's coming along now, Lalu, Montverde, Sunrise, IMG, those are the teams that have been up there in the IBC this year.
Yeah. Horace, do you have any thoughts on just the dominance of the top teams? And obviously the top teams are producing the top players.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I think it's great for those kids to be put in that environment as they prepare for that next level. Mm-hmm. It's nothing like, competition. If I'm one of those guys, I don't want to play against, Joey, who's, 6 feet center, while I'm trying to get ready to play college basketball.
Right.
So why not be in this environment? Now, there's some great programs out there outside of the NIBC, but, to be put into that fire on a regular basis, I mean, what's better? I mean, I love it.
Yeah, that's true. And I say the same thing too. I have my thoughts about it. I remember when I followed the McDonald's game when I was younger, and Horace, you were probably following it too, and obviously you were playing.
That's a shot at my age, man. I see it's a shot at my age. But go ahead.
I try to backdoor that, man. I ain't gonna tell nobody how old you are, and I ain't gonna tell nobody how old Ani is either. So
I'm definitely old.
So when I first saw 2 guys from the same team, for the first 10 years or so, there was no guys from the same team. It was 24 guys from 24 programs. And then Flint Hill Prep did it, with Stu Vetter. And then Oak Hill started doing it consistently. Like by 90, 91, 92, 93, they were doing it consistently. So when you see in 2019, IMG had 3 on their national championship team. And now they have 3 again in 4 years. Does that kind of like, wow, is that what this game was in essence made for? To have 3 guys from one team? When you think of all the high school teams in the country, there's 50 I rank every week. There's another 100 that are really, really good. And there's probably 20,000 teams, and then 3 guys are from one team. What's your guys' first thought on that? Or is it just, hey, the best players are the best players and that's how it works?
Yeah, Horace, you go.
Yeah, well, I just think because of how everything has been, all this, who wants to smoke type challenges that you see in the summertime in grassroots basketball, that everybody wants to be put in these environments where they're competing every night. If you have a night off, it looks like you had a night off. In a regular environment, you could have a night off and still score 20, right? I know a kid that's at one of the NIBC schools, and he can literally sleepwalk to 20, 25 points and 10 rebounds. Now he's in this environment, he's fighting to get 10 points. So I think it wasn't made for that. The game itself was, but I think like everything else, you kind of migrate to situations. And I think we've migrated to this situation because everybody wants to see the best against the best. Right.
Yeah, you're right. I would have to agree with that. Again, it's still a little shocking. When I first saw the IMG guys, I was like, whoa, it was the kid at the forward at Villanova on that great team they had a few years ago that won the Geico Nationals. And it's just like 3 guys from one team. But I was like, hey, you know what? It's used to be 2 guys from one team was shocking. And then, obviously any school would be honored to have a McDonald's All-American. And it seems like we have 2 guys. Do we have 2 guys from other schools too, right? Do we have 2 guys from Richardson?
No, we just have one. Just
one from Richardson. Just Kaysen. Okay.
You think we'll ever see where a school has more than 3?
I hope not. I hope, because it's just like 4/5 of your roster. Like,
right.
It's like 4/5 of your starting 5.
I mean, Montverde came really close. Yeah. I mean, they get every year they get pretty close.
Team.
Yeah.
The 220 team had 3 guys too, and they came through. That team was really good. Like when you think of, and they had 3 top draft picks, right? Cade, and they had Scotty, who's now down in Orlando,
right?
And the big kid.
Yeah, he was early second or late first. Yeah.
What's his name? His name escapes me.
Sharp, wasn't it?
Shaden Sharp.
Dayron Sharp.
Dayron Sharp, right?
Dayron Sharp.
Dayron Sharp. Shaden Sharp's obviously the top kid, one of the top kids in this class. Yeah, Dayron Sharp. And then they had a 4th kid that was right on the cusp.
Right.
Moses Moody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Moses Moody was right there. He was just a little off. But like you said, Horace, Moses Moody, all those guys averaging 12 points a game, basically, except for Cade. You know what I mean? Cade was, I think, at 13-9. And I have an episode. You go back to an old episode, the End of the Paint Show. We talked about the greatest high school teams of all time. Broke it down with all the coaches, and that's one of them that we had on with Kevin Bowen talking about that team. We talked about the 93 Oak Hill team, which had 2 guys. They had Jeff McGinnis and Jerry Stackhouse, who was kind of like a number 1 guy or number 2 guy. And then, Jeff was a top 20 guy, but they had Maktar Njai, and they had a few other guys that were right there. Right. Even that to me was like, wow, at that time, I thought like those teams are so much better than the high school teams. And that was the 3rd straight year that Oak Hill had 2 McDonald's All-Americans. They had Chris Davis, and they had, I think, Martise Moore in 1992. And then they had their assistant coach, the point guard who went to Virginia, Corey Alexander, and they had Ben Davis, who ended up at Arizona in 1991. So it was starting in the early 90s that like Oak Hill had 2 guys, and then it was started like becoming kind of common. Like, okay, 2 guys is not a big deal. So again, like you said, we're at 3 now.
IMG and 3
are getting 3.
Well, you know what the trick would be? The trick would be if one of the regular high schools had 2, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and they do. I mean, they've had it. You look at Sierra Canyon has 2. Kajani Wright.
2.
And
they're kind of in between, right? Yeah, to me, Sierra Canyon is like in between because they can still go get somebody,
They're state title, but you're right. They're the 10th team in the country, but they get players. They've had players from various parts of the country. And, it's happened. There's been 2 guys who've been to the same public high school or to the same high school that's plays for a state title. And that's always neat to see, especially if they grew up together. Especially if they kind of grew up around the same thing. I want to get your take because there's been a lot of talk on social media. How many guys are from a general like Dallas metropolitan area in this game or from a general vicinity in Texas?
5.
So there's 5 guys.
Yeah, so Jordan Walsh from like the Oak Cliff area.
Okay.
Really Cedar Hill. Keontae Louisville. Arterio Morris, South Dallas. Who else we had? Kaysen, Richardson. And then the other one, Anthony Black, Duncanville, but was at Capel. Yeah, so we have 5 from the DFW area.
Yeah,
wow,
and that's
pretty strong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was in the 22 class is very, very strong.
So, just so our you listeners around the country know, what colleges are around that metroplex, like that metropolitan area? What
So
college?
you got TCU,
Okay.
SMU,
Okay.
UNT, UTA. That's about it. I mean, it's so easy. Like you can, and what's so great is like I can catch a college game like tonight. TCU plays Texas at TCU. Like you know, it's just great that you got like 4 legitimate like Division I schools that you can just.
So, but my point is, those schools got their homework. I mean, they got some work to do.
Oh yeah.
Because if you got 5 McDonald's All-Americans right in that vicinity, or you recruiting see them at a game. Again, they all went to different schools, but it's hard. You got to keep up because, like you said, it's a problem that's happened in many places where guys keep leaving the area. It's happening in Los Angeles. It's happened in other places. I'm sure it's happening in Georgia too, Horace.
Happens a lot.
And like at TCU and SMU, they like for them to get a kid like that currently, like they would have to identify them early, like very like kind of early before and really get on it early. You know, they can't go in when like Baylor steps in, or like they can't come in late. Those type of kids, they gotta get in early and attack it really hard. You know.
Yeah, is that the situation too? You think with Georgia Tech right now?
Well, I think
how's it going recruiting in that metroplex? Because there's great talent. Obviously, there's not a great senior class in Georgia, but there's been some really good senior classes recently.
There's been some great classes. I just think with Georgia Tech, it's an academic situation, right? Mm-hmm. So they have to go down a road where if you're an elite player and you have those sort of academics, now you're looking at a Stanford and Duke, you know, as opposed to say Georgia Tech. Now, I think they're doing a great job at Tech. I mean, a really, really good job. I think Pastner's done a great job. Who would have thought that they would have been in position to win that, ACC tournament, Yeah. So he's done a good job. Georgia, on the other hand, is a little different. I really think the perception of Georgia is you can't go there and be a pro. That's a perception. I don't know what the reality is, right? Anthony Edwards was there. KCP was there. You've had guys there, and you've had guys one and done there, but they just can't seem to get past that mindset. Auburn is essentially a Georgia school. They Bruce Pearl literally can come into Georgia and get who he wants. It's crazy. I mean, he's got an infectious personality, you know what I mean? So he does a great job. People like him. And I just think, I don't know. They've done a good job. I'm not going to take anything away from the other guys. They just need to do a better job and keep the talent in state. There's no way Walker Kessler should have not gone to UGA.
Wow. Yeah.
Dad went there. Uncle went there. Mom went there. I met Kessler at a Georgia game. His brother went there.
Aren't they in the Hall of Fame?
Huh?
Isn't that family like in the Hall of Fame or something like that?
They should be, because Alec Kessler was a lottery pick. Mm-hmm. Played at Miami, first round pick or whatever, and unfortunately died on the father-son game at a father-son game. Oh, wow. That's his uncle. He's had a sister that played. She was the only one that didn't go to Georgia. She went to LSU, I believe it was. Okay. Played volleyball, but they have to do a better job keeping kids like that home. They really do. Yeah.
And that's one of the keys. Recruiting is difficult, just like we said with Dallas area. UCLA and USC are doing a lot better job in recent years, and it's showing on the court. I mean, it's made a difference on the court. Look what USC did with Onyeka Okongwu. Obviously, Evan Mobley, he did good in his 1 year there. They have the brother there. You got to have the right recruiter. And obviously, his father joined the staff, and that was a great move by their head coach to bring the father. It's giving them knowledge. I mean, it pays off in a certain respect. So yeah, you got to start at home. Some schools do a good job, and some schools do a good job nationally. Obviously, as we see with some of these McDonald's All-American picks, like you said, Alabama, that's really awesome. But they've done some really good work in the tournament. Mm-hmm. They obviously played against UCLA in that game. Like you said, when you have eyeballs in a certain week, it's really good. It's really devastating when a team loses in that second round game, like a good program. Why I always say, because the media, when you get to the Sweet 16, the media talks for you for another 5 days or 6 days.
Right.
All over the country. You got people are going to talk about you. It's really hard when you're a really good team to lose in that second round because you don't get that extra week of publicity. So it's Alabama's done a good job, and so has another few teams.
Well,
So
they had a fun. I'm going to say this one thing, Ron. They had having a fun style of basketball. It makes up for a lot. When a kid is looking at Alabama play, and they're letting their bigs, every big wants to be a wing these days. Right?
They grab and go.
Yeah, so it's a situation where they feel like that school or schools like that fun environments for me to play at. Why not go to Alabama and play, or any other school that's in that situation?
Correct. Yeah, I agree with you. It seems that that's what's happening a little bit with Arizona. They had the cloud hanging over Sean Miller a little bit. They had good talent, but everything seems so tight and so tight-lipped. Nobody knew where to turn. Man, is he gonna get fired? Is he gonna get let go? They bring in the Gonzaga assistant, and man, they're this pressure's off. They're just playing ball and they're having fun. Obviously, as you listen to this pod, UCLA is going to play Arizona as this pod is being shot later on. By the time you listen to this, that game will probably be already decided. But that's a big game for that program, and that's a big game for UCLA too. Arizona don't have a lot of McDonald's All-Americans, but they got a good system, and like you said, they're having fun.
That's my dark horse to win it all.
Wow.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're fun to watch.
I mean, I must say something. I watched the Tennessee game. I watched the Illinois game with Big Kofi. They won there in Champaign. I couldn't believe. Now, once in a while, I'll go to a game and I'll say, this is bad. The Arizona-Tennessee game was the worst officiated game I've seen in 15 to 20
Horrible.
years. It was awful.
That was bad.
It was awful. I was
that was bad.
But I think that did Arizona a favor. Say, you know what? We almost still won. We know we can beat. If we meet this team in the 16 or the 8, we'll get them at a neutral court. You know what I mean? I think that's Tommy Lloyd probably took that angle because that game was crazy. I just had to mention that because that's the worst game I've seen in a while officiated. I mean, a long time. The game I really kind of turned and Horace, you might have a game that you look at it different because you played college basketball, and it's like when I was a fan when I was younger. I'd watch college. I had my teams, and as I told Ani on a podcast earlier, I said if you liked UNLV, you immediately liked the Fab Five. Once UNLV left, you went to the Fab Five. That was just a natural procession, And later on, I was watching that Duke Arizona game in the 2001 championship, and the 2001 semifinal against Maryland. A lot of the fans were booing the calls because they thought Maryland was getting hosed. And then in that championship game, I no longer looked at it from that point forward. I was never a fan per se of it like I was before. It was business. It was like, I loved college basketball, but it was never the same. Jason Williams fell on Jason Gardner, and that would have been his third foul. They didn't call it. Jason Gardner got hit against the stanchion against Shane Battier. They didn't call it. I was like, okay, I get it.
Right. So did you miss the UCF Duke game? Did you miss the UCF Duke game?
Wow.
When Duke played UCF and Zion Williamson just completely cleared the dude out. I mean, it was called nothing. It was crazy.
Yeah. See, but at that again, after that 2001 game, I'm no longer surprised. You know what I mean? That game completely changed the way I look at, and it probably changed it for good. I'm no longer a young guy. I've got to grow up at some point. You know what I mean? That's life. So,
narratives will be painted.
Yeah. I remember the thing I remember about that tournament game is the one where they missed it at the buzzer, right? Somebody missed a dunk or a putback at the buzzer that would have beat Duke, and then Duke lost the next game. That's what I remember.
Yeah. That was Johnny Dawkins' son.
Okay. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Johnny Dawkins' son was involved in every play at the end of the game, unfortunately.
Yeah. I remember that. And I said, Duke's going to lose. I kind of knew Duke probably wasn't going to win the tournament, and then they lost the next game. They got a little stagnant. But we're just talking about the great things we've seen, and we're getting a little off topic. But it's still relevant to what we're saying. Absolutely. Fit and getting the horses. You got to have the horses. And then the second thing, as Horse said, is fit, having fun. being in the right situation. So let's move on. Florida had six guys, or the state of Florida had 6 guys. California had 4 this year. Texas had 4. But again, we're counting on where they're going to school, which is a little different than where they grew up. So, Ani, you mentioned it. There's 5 guys from the greater Dallas Metroplex. That's very interesting. Now, let's talk about the game itself. Guys, put you on the spot a little bit. And, Ani, you go first. What's the one thing you'd like to see changed or upgraded, and how they pick the team?
Well, I'm going to take Horace's answer. I'm going to go brief on it, but it was the same thing I was or I think you, Ronnie, one of y'all kind of talked about it. But I just feel like, getting more of the voters just out there more to see more like the games and the players. You know what I mean? I do feel like that is kind of lacking a little bit, or somewhat really. Just, there needs to be events, or there's just, we got to get some more of the voters out there watching these games and these teams more, and these players. I don't think that from across the board is where it needs to be. I would say that, and I can kind of speak that just from what I've seen, like it's not where it needs to be.
Okay. And Horace, what do you think?
Ani, you're definitely not off in saying that. So for me, part of it is I think they treat the McDonald's voting board as if it's the Supreme Court. Like, you're on it and you're on it forever. And I know guys that don't vote. They have someone else vote for them. They don't go to any games, right? And that's a fact.
Yeah.
So I don't really understand if they want to still be on because they feel good to have their name associated with the game.
Yeah,
it's just, they could be honorary members. But I just think you need to shake it up every few years, particularly if guys aren't, to Ani's point, if you're not getting out and seeing games, right? If you're not getting out and seeing games, you shouldn't be a voter. And I think sometimes that affects, we saw talking about who got snubbed, or really, the tie goes to the runner, and the tie is the kid that went to Duke or the kid that went to Pittsburgh. The Duke guy gets it, right? Because he's Duke. So I really think that there needs to be some shakeup in the guys that are voting. Just me personally. Yeah.
Okay, I'll kind of take a little bit about both of what you said, and I kind of came up with a quick little scenario or a little bit of some kind of criteria that, to Ani's point, I think you should have some designated events that are designated as McDonald's events where there's going to be a lot of the voters, or the voters are pressed to go, hey, we want you to go. It could be Hoop Hall, could be the EYBL Peach Jam, could be Angles All-American Camp, NBA Top 100, City of Palms, whatever it is. So let's say it's 12 or 15. And as a voter, you have to show that you've gone to 5 or 6 of those. You got to go to 5 or 6. And of course, things happen. People get sick. There's COVID. There's travel issues. But let's say there's 12. Let's say there's 12 events. You got to go to 5 of them. And if you don't do it for 2 years consecutively, you say, hey, you're off. They just keep track. Hey, you didn't go to the vote. Something like that. And that would help those events be prestigious. Like, who wouldn't want to run an event, whether it's New York to LA, Dinos' Pangos Camp, NBA players, where it's like, hey, this is a McDonald's All-American designated event where there's going to be multiple voters in attendance. Again, choose 20, I don't know, whatever the percentage may be. I just think something like that would work. Like you said, have it above board where people understand. And then, if you get removed, if you're over 65, obviously people in America work to about 65, 63 years old. You go to the Emeritus Committee, or you go to the Veterans Committee, where they honor you, where you have input, where you're a consultant. If you're over 65 or 70 and you're not traveling no more, which is fine. Nobody has a problem with that.
Yeah.
But you still have some kind of influence, or you still see the ballot and, hey, I know this, or I saw this, or I know this player. So I think just a little bit of that. So it's taking a little bit of both of your guys. I think the committee does a good job overall. I mean, there's not a lot of big complaints this year. I don't think there's people going.
No, I don't. I think in terms of, we started the conversation off with snubs. I was trying to find one. I don't know if I could find a snub. Can you make an argument for a kid? Yeah, absolutely. You could.
Absolutely.
I don't think there was anyone I got snubbed. Which Fino, Johan, you could make arguments for. But snubbed?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Well, those are not big things. Those were just things that we thought we could mention that be kind of not too hard to implement, and it would make the process a little better for everybody around the country. As we're speaking about snubs, Ani, I know you wanted to mention a player, and I have a couple players I want to mention. Go ahead and talk about who you thought probably was one of the 24 guys.
Yeah, for me, I thought Malik Renew. That's I believe he's going. Where did he commit to? Was it Florida?
I want to
I think it's Florida.
This Florida, yeah. With Montverde, been a really impactful player for them. Had a really strong summer with the Florida EYBL team, Night Riders. He was at Night Riders, and then had a really good summer. And then I thought just during the season and IBC sessions, I thought he's been really good. Been like a borderline double guy. In the game against Duncanville, who's fantastic. I thought he was a big reason that they even made the comeback and were up by 1 or up by 2 till the game winner. So I think he's been fantastic this year. I think he's shown his versatility, his inside out game, and just has a winning pedigree.
Let me jump in there on that. Dylan Mitchell, was he going to Texas from Montverde? Was he going to make this game 7 months ago? You think 8 months ago?
No.
Oh, okay. So the reason I brought that up is maybe his step up in performance and him making the game maybe hurt his teammate or his teammates a little bit who could have been.
Yeah, because they both basically play the same position. Yeah.
Yeah, so I could see that, like you said. So sometimes, to Horace's point, it's like I'm gonna want better competition, but when some guy comes into your program, that changes your dynamic. I think Sierra Canyon has a little bit of that dynamic right now because they got Amari Bailey who's missing games, playing games, missing games. They got Isaiah Ihulim, who's a top 5 player in his class. Kajani Wright, who made the McDonald's All-American game. He barely scores sometimes. He barely scores because they got Mikey Price, who's a top 100 guy in the junior class. They got Bronny, who takes plenty of shots, So like you said, sometimes when you're playing with a lot of guys, a lot of talented guys, the fit changes or how it goes down changes. What do you guys think about Sky Clark coming back? Do you think he's going to be healthy? Obviously, he didn't make the game. Obviously, they have a lot of other good guys. Where do you see him projecting? What do you see happening with Sky Clark?
Yeah, Horace, you got.
Well, me personally, I need to see a lot more. I haven't really seen a lot of them, so
yeah, sure.
It's really hard to say. He came to Atlanta and played before he got hurt the first summer of the pandemic, and wanted to see more out of him. From that point, I know guys have been around him that speak highly of him, but he's been hurt, so it's really hard to put my finger on what I expect out of him down the road. As a player at Kentucky, it's gonna be really hard.
Right. That's kind of where I'm at. You can tell he's still playing through like the rust of not playing. I think he came down to Dallas and played like a game or two.
Yeah.
And he was just okay there. I'm like, Horace, just there's not enough of a sample size in the past, really 2 years, honestly, to really get a feel for
where he's projected, where he's going.
Projected, and like Horace said, what's expectations at Kentucky? What does that look like, going to his freshman year? Because he just hasn't played for a while. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, I mentioned Dayron Sharp, and I meant him, and I said Shaden Sharp. I meant Dayron Sharp from Montverde, the big guy. Shaden Sharp, is he not going to play this year? Any games? And now, he was the top guy in this class as a postgraduate. He wouldn't have been eligible for the McDonald's game if he would have stayed in this class. Do you guys think he's projecting that high over guys who have college games and more experience? Because when the last I seen him at Paul Weston at the Border League, I right now, frankly, didn't see a top 7 or 8 pick. But again, that's just, my pick. So what do you guys think based on who is eligible for this draft and where is he going? Does he what's his situation?
I'm hearing that he's going to go in the 22 draft. I heard he's going to declare. And from what I've been hearing, from what I've been gathering, they are looking at him as a 5 to 10 pick. Yeah. So From what I'm hearing, I'm like he's about 99% sure that he's going to declare.
Sure. And Horace, do you have any thought, or like, do you think,
Man,
hey, if we're going to pick you that high, I'm going, you know?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And if anybody can do it, or any school can have a kid do that, right? It's Kentucky, right?
Sure.
Right.
We've seen guys sit out an entire year and get drafted. So I think that's possible. Now, Dwayne Washington said it's not happening, right? That's his guy.
Yeah.
And I tried to reach out to him the other day to talk to him about that, but he didn't pick up. So I didn't get the information I needed. But he's saying he's coming back. He's got no thoughts of leaving. But it's like the coach that says, I love my school, I'm not going anywhere. Right? And 2 days later, he's gone.
Right. And we know how the information could go about, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me throw my picks out there as we continue on snubs. I thought these two guys deserved a little bit more. Maybe they could have made it. I kind of understand why they didn't. One is a little heavier than the other. Colin Chandler, the guard, going to be BYU, and Judah Mintz, who we talked about on episode 112 last week. Ani, again, numbers game. I think with Judah Mintz, I think he came on a little too late. You know, he's a tough player, the Oak Hill guard. Again, coach at Gonzaga, Steve Turner, told me how good he was in the preseason, even though he was no longer part of his program. I think he was right on the money. The guy's really good.
Yes.
Colin Chandler, he went to Pangos All-American Camp, did good. Again, is he little too late, Johnny come lately, not at the right high school? Is he ups and downs, not as consistent? What is your guys' take on Colin Chandler?
I like Colin Chandler a lot. He played well at the NBA camp.
Yeah.
It was one of those Grady Dick, Colin Chandler, to me, right? Yeah. They're both really good shooters. Yeah. I love the energy that they play with, the fire that they play with, the competitiveness that they play with. Again, that's one of those guys you could say, I can make a real argument that he should be there.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know so much if it's a snub, but I think there's definitely an argument to be made for him being in there. It's funny, someone mentioned him to me before this podcast that's a kid that should have been in the game, and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think he made himself a strong case to make the game. I thought he got better throughout the summer. I think starting Pangos All-American Camp, where I thought he had a really good showing. Like Horace said, NBA Top 100 Camp, he was really good. And he finished out that July really strong. I didn't really keep up with him much since the high school season, so I don't know exactly how that's kind of been going for him. But I thought from like Pangos All-American Camp through, he was really good.
Yeah. You're right. And those are two big events, and obviously he's going to have a great career. I think he might go on a Mormon mission, if I'm not mistaken.
He will. Yeah.
On a Mormon mission. So we'll see how he looks, and when he comes back. The guy I always think about, Horace, you'll remember him when going on a Mormon mission, he was a quarterback in high school, and he went to BYU, big quarterback, 6'8", Michael Smith. He was actually a backup for the Celtics. Michael Smith, Horace.
I do. Well, all those guys, man, they take that trip and they come back and they're looking like grown men.
Yeah.
And, it's like it's almost unfair to some of these guys, man.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
That Danny Ainge crew, with Danny Ainge, man, those guys are like grown men out there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember when Danny Ainge made that full court play to win the tournament game, and he was a great athlete. I'll say he played baseball, he played football, and Mike Smith. Mike Smith's not really a well-known player, Ani. You probably don't know much. He played a little bit for the Celtics, but he was a big-time high school quarterback, 6'8", like considered one of the best in the country, and he went on a mission. So it's pretty interesting there. So those are my two guys. They weren't big. I think Colin I would take as a little bit bigger, but as we go about. The McDonald's game's been around over 44 years now, 1977, 1978. And like you said, there's not really no snubs. There's some guys that deserve discussion, like Horace said, but there's been some snubs. So I wanted to go through this with you guys as we segment to a next part of this show as we're going to wrap up here in a little while. The all-time snubs, the guys who, nothing like Judah Mintz or Colin or a few guys we're talking about. I mean, guys that just were like, whoa, this is eye-opening. So I wanted to get your guys' take on that. Horace, I think you have a great one who would be on anybody's list.
Absolutely. Rod Strickland. To me, probably one of the best guard finishers in the history of the NBA, man. His trickery and layup package is ridiculous. If you hear guys talk about it, Kyrie Irving got a lot of his finishing packages from Rod, because Rod and Dedrick, Kyrie's dad, were friends from back in the day. Sure. But he's been underrated his entire career. Yeah. He never made an all-star game, right? Yeah. Never made an all-star game. Wasn't a McDonald's. All he did was play really good ball, man. I used to tell kids that I coached that were point guards, go watch Rod Strickland, and look at me like the side eye, like, who's Rod Strickland? Go watch Rod Strickland.
Yeah.
Tell me he didn't have crazy vision and a layup package to die for. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think he was a big miss. Yeah,
I agree with you. I'll say something about Rod Strickland. I had on this podcast many moons ago during the pandemic, Dwayne Cooper. He was a 1992 draft pick of the Lakers, Ani, and he played a little while in the NBA. And we were talking about Magic Johnson at the time and him announcing that he had HIV and learning a little bit about Kobe Bryant in his young years. And he goes, yeah, I got into a training camp and I was good. He played with Harold Miner at USC. And he goes, I thought I was a guard. I could stick in the NBA. He's all, the first time I tried to guard Rod Strickland, he was like, he knew he was going to probably be a backup. This guy was on another level without trying.
Yeah, man. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, he was just an unbelievable guard. Made it look easy. And again, we talk about those things, and I would love to talk a little bit more with Steve Smith about it. He was an assistant coach, and he told me Rod had come over from Harry Truman in New York to Oak Hill, and he was kind of like the Rod Strickland police. That was his job as an assistant coach, to make sure Rod didn't do too much. You know what I mean? And Rod just had a little bit of that reputation as a street ball player, as a guy, again, guys who went to Oak Hill mostly from New York then, who needed to improve their academic situation or needed to get straight. Right. So very interesting situation.
But the question, Ron, I don't mean to interrupt, but the question would be, would Rod have been snubbed
today?
No,
because Oak Hill has a better reputation. I don't know if you know this, Ani, when Steve became the head coach, their first year, they had a couple of guys that were post grads, and people were like, what is this renegade team? And it took them a few years, probably like 5 years, to clean that perception up. And then, like I said, in the early 90s, Rod graduated in 1985. And by the early 90s, they had a positive reputation. They were helping kids. It was a good thing. Then guys started making the McDonald's game. So to Horace's point, he had been in the McDonald's game over the group of guards who made it his year. Everybody
absolutely. Social media would have taken him over the top.
Right. Especially like the plays he made and his handle and everything.
Oh my gosh!
They would love
Ballislife life sensation. He would have been a Ballislife sensation. Shit, he is a Ballislife life sensation.
Right.
His highlights once in a while, and he's great on social media. He'll jump on there and say something once in a while. Hey, thank you or whatever. Or hey, that was pretty cool. So that's pretty interesting. Ani, how about you? Who was your one or two big snubs that would obviously be bigger than any guy this year?
Yeah, I thought Jamias Ramsey in 2019. I thought that was snub, just leading Duncanville to a state championship that year. I thought he had a really good summer, and he averaged about 16 points per game. He was one that came on late. I know he went to IMG and then kind of came back to Duncanville. Yeah. I thought that was fairly I thought that was a snub, and I thought in 2018, I thought Tyler Hero. I thought he was a pretty big snub, and I know he was at it was Whitenall, I think.
Whitenall,
in Wisconsin, but I thought he was a pretty big snub. I loved watching him during that summer too, and I thought that was kind of a no-brainer. But
very interesting. Obviously, Jordan McCabe got a lot of the social media shine. the stuff you're talking about that Rod would have got. Jordan McCabe.
All the prettiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No looks and the thing. So, yeah, those are very interesting. My pick from 2018, and it was a really good class because we had a lot of them at the Ballislife All-American game. Jordan was there, the guard from North Carolina who did really well. We had a couple guys that weren't in other All-Star games that did good. James Akinjo, who went to Georgetown, Matt McClung. You know, it was a really interesting game. But the guy who I thought was snubbed, and he did a really good job, and he was on EYBL, and he was well known, was Emmett Williams. He might have been a little bit undersized, but he dominated every time I seen him playing. And then the All-Stars games, he was like terrific. So he was MVP in the Ballislife All-Star game. At the Jordan game, he went for 44. Obviously, it's a lot of dunks and stuff, but still, it was just his dominance. Right. I thought he was a guy who I would have picked in 218. So again, 218 is a very big class. Now, I'll go over my all-time because I researched this about 5 years ago or so. I researched this, kind of playing off on when you said, and I wanted to go back to a guy Horace mentioned, but I'll give off my top 10, and you guys can comment on this, and I'll mention them a little bit, but I'll come back after I mention the 10. Number 1 is Glenn Rice from Flint Northwestern in 1985. We go back, wing forward, who went to Michigan. Rod Strickland would be my number 2. More recent, and I think he's the guy who brought up a lot of some of this, what we're talking about in this whole podcast today. Onyeka Okongwu, Chino Hills, USC 2019 number 3. Mark Wilson, who was a really good player. I thought he should have been like Tyler Lewis from Oak Hill, who kind of deserved it based on his early season senior year. He was a kid who led his high school team to a national championship. Trevor Ariza, who went to Westchester. Hassan Adams had made it the year before, who went to Arizona, and Trevor went to UCLA. I remember at his jersey retirement ceremony at Westchester High School in LA, and Sonny Vaccaro and a few others were like, yeah, this guy should have made the McDonald's. I think he had all the accolades to make it. I thought that was a snub. I thought that was an easy pick in 2003. 6 is Horace's guy, Cam Thomas. Horace, why don't you run down real quick what Cam Thomas did? And you look at it and you're like, wow, this guy didn't make the game. That's the first time I seen Steve Smith jump on social media and be like, what? He was just like, what's going on here? He really did jump on social media and say that.
Well, what's crazy is we talk about social media, right? How, Rod wouldn't have been snubbed in the social media era.
Yeah.
He's in the social media era. Cam Thomas is. Leads EYBL in scoring. EYBL Offensive Player of the Year. Averaged 29 points a game in EYBL. He led Oak Hill in scoring. He's SEC Freshman of the Year. He averages 24 points a game his freshman year at LSU. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What did we miss?
Yeah.
What did they miss?
What are we looking at? Right. So he's number 6 on my list. 7 would be Muggsy Bogues. Now, people say Muggsy. I know a lot about the team. I had Herman Harried, his high school teammate, on the pod before I talked to you guys about that greatest all-time teams. He was a guest. And Reggie Williams was the number 1 or number 2 player in the country that year, 1983. And it was either him or Pearl Washington, depending on what day it was. And Pearl played better in the All-Star games. Reggie had a great senior year. He was the National Player of the Year on the best team in the country, maybe the best team of all time. If you saw the Baltimore boys 30 for 30, you've seen all that, know a lot about it. But Muggsy was the dude that made them go. He was their team MVP. He was their leader. Who cares if he was 5'3"? The great story I have about it is we all know how good Camden basketball's been for years and years and years. And their junior year, they went into Camden, and the fans there in Camden were laughing at. They're like, who is this team from Baltimore, and who's this little guy warming up? Like, are you kidding me? Ani, you may not know they had the number 1 player in the country, Billy Thompson. They had
I read one.
They had they had
Milt Wagner.
Milt Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are rolling, averaging 110 points a game. They're going to destroy this team. Muggsy took them apart. Couldn't bring they got some 10-second violations. picking guys. It was 84-59. They blitzed them. The first time they lost at home in 13, 14 years. It was like, so, and he averaged, I have his averages right here. This is Muggs.
They made it out of Camden safely?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's another situation. That's another situation. So, Muggs, he averaged 8 points a game, 10 assists, and 8 steals. And Bob Gagan, who created the McDonald's game, he remembers he told me this a few years ago, it's because of his height that a lot of people didn't project him to be a star, and nobody projected him to be a great college player. But he said they took Muggsy to the Capital Classic because of Reggie. And he went on to Wake Forest and played for a couple Team USA teams, and he's just a great story. So he would be 7. 8 would be DeAndre Jordan. I'm looking back at my notes and looking back at things he did in the summer and at the teams he played for in the grassroots circuit. I'm not really sure what was missing there. DeAndre played good at 2006 ABCD camp. As a senior, he averaged 19, 14, and 5 blocks. He was good. I don't really see the reason other than that's a great class. 2007 is one of the best classes, probably the best class I've ever been able to evaluate. So he'd be 8. 9 and 10, a little bit controversial. I think 9, I'll go Sergio McClain. Again, didn't project as a great all NBA player. He was a terrific high school player. He played with Frank Williams, and he played with the big man who went to Fresno State in high schools, Peoria Manuel. They won the national championship. He was their father. He played for his father. He went to Illinois, and he helped them to an Elite 8 where they lost to that Arizona team I mentioned that got hosed by Duke. They lost in the 2001 Elite 8. Sergio was a really good player. I just thought he deserved it as a high school player. Maybe he didn't project. He was ranked like 40 or so, but I thought he deserved it. And then my last guy to round out the top 10 would be Kawhi Leonard. Very interesting story with Kawhi. I just don't think he was in the right situation grassroots-wise. He played on Renardo Sidney's father's team, and obviously Renardo Sidney was the star. People didn't really know who he was. I remember vividly some college coaches me asking me, like, who's that guy? They thought he was the guy who went to Arizona. Was it Jordan Hill? I remember.
Yeah, Jordan Hill went to Arizona.
Solomon Hill. The names were switched in the book. The names were switched in the program. He goes, man, that's Solomon Hill. God damn, he's good. These guys didn't know who Kawhi was at all because they barely knew the LA Dream Team at all anyway, because obviously they knew who Renardo was. They obviously knew who Renardo's dad was coaching the team. It was obvious. He stuck out pretty obvious. So they're trying to figure out the other guys on the roster. They're just kind of thrown together. And Kawhi was just good. He was good his junior year, pretty good. His dad had passed away during the season. He got murdered. And it kind of slowed him down a little bit. But he played well. And then by his beginning of his senior year, he was back strong. He was up 15 pounds. He was shooting the 3 better. And he was by far the best player in the state. But I just think it was too late. It was too late.
Right.
Guys hadn't seen him. Because everybody knew he was the best. Like, he should have been a Pac-12 recruit and was the best player in California. But it was like a missed opportunity. So that's my 10. I'll put something on ballslife.com about it a little later. And I guess Emmett Williams would be my 11. So just very interesting there. Glenn Rice, number. I talked to Bob Gagan, who invented the game, and this is what he said verbatim. He said, the committee didn't choose him. We knew of him because back then, Ani, college coaches were allowed to publicly say things about high school players.
Okay.
Like they're not allowed to now, right?
Right.
Now maybe sign them after they turn in their letter of intent. High school players can be recruited. High school coaches and college coaches were quoted in newspapers, and sometimes college coaches said the most outlandish things. Why? Because they wanted that recruit
to get the kid.
Right.
So they would say, this guy's the best player I've seen in 30 years. This guy is this, So Bill Frieder would call up and say, Bill Frieder was all over it because he had great recruits then. He had Roy Tarpley. He had, Joubert, Gary Grant. They had top 5 recruiting classes, and Glenn Rice was a little bit overlooked. But he called up and said, guys, hey, Bob, this guy needs to be in your game. And he goes, well, I'll tell the committee, about him. And Glenn Rice was the Mr. Basketball. Their team was ranked 4th in the country, 28-0. He averaged 20.8 points per game. He was even better as a senior, and they just missed. There's no other.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
They just missed. He was a great shooter, 6'8". Funny on it, he played with Andre Rison, the wide receiver, and he played with Jeff Grayer, who became an NBA player. So they had a great team, but like he was the star, he was the Mr. Basketball. So I don't really know what happened there, but that's my list.
Wow.
And good list.
Yeah. I really like the Cam Thomas. I kind of forgot about Cam. Wanted to close out with this because we talk about snubs. My big problem with social media and snubs is if you can't name who's coming off, don't tell me who's your snub.
Right.
You're saying you're kind of putting another shine on another kid, but you're shitting on another kid. You know what I mean? Like you're somebody has to come off. There's only 24 spots. So on that note, like with Onyeka, I mean, I said it at the time, like, Samuel Williamson or Oscar Tashibi has to come off. Like I don't have no problem saying that.
Absolutely.
No, I don't have no problem saying that publicly. Nothing against those two guys. I hope they have great long college and NBA careers. But like, how did Onyeka become the 6th pick of the draft? It didn't just happen magically. Like he was good. I mean, the funny thing is he played on the most watched social high school team of all time, and we still missed him. So I mean, what did you guys think of that at the time? Did you think it was just, well, maybe they don't want a certain amount of centers, he's not ranked high enough? I don't see any logical explanation.
I personally think it was just so much focus on those guys.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Because we played against them when he played they played AU together in Vegas. Yeah. And he was a problem, So I think a lot of it was so many eyes. You ever talk to a coach and they go see a kid and you say to them, "Hey, did you see Tom Johnson?"
Yeah.
Nah, I didn't see Tom. Well, he played on that team that you went to go watch Bob James play on.
Right, correct.
I didn't really pay attention to him. There it is, right?
Yeah.
And that Tom Johnson is really good. It happens.
Yeah.
That's a lot of that.
I take it back to that 2018 game with Team Takeover against Compton Magic. And I think turned everybody's eyes to how good Evan Mobley was. Like, people are like, okay, this guy is really good. Obviously, he's going up against a big kid from DeMatha, and there was couple other big kids on that team, the kid at Michigan. And it was a great game. But Onyeka was productive. People were like, he was always productive. He was productive in high school. He was productive with the Compton Magic. I think, like, to Horace's point, when you look at a guy like Evan, it's you can't take your eyes off him, or that's the guy you're going to gravitate towards and watch.
Right.
When you're watching the 6'8" guy who's blocking shots, doing the work, and it's like, is he, maybe you have questions. Because I remember a few prominent voters said that, okay, well, who do we take off? And I was like, you want me to tell you who to take off?
Right.
Better. So very interesting. Again, it's still congratulations to all the guys who made it this year and who've all made it over the years. And again, we talk about snubs. It's just something so people have more insight. Again, most of them are very deserving, and except for whoever's on over Glenn and Rod, I'm not really sure. But besides those
or Cam Thomas.
Hey,
or Cam Thomas.
I want to point out too, though, lastly for me, we talk about the snubs, but the guys that just almost came out of nowhere, Ernest Uday, who was relative unknown until last spring. JJ Starling, who started off hot, then almost disappeared. Like, I forgot the kid even existed. Okay. And then had such a great summer. And of course, right now, Lamir is having a great high school season. So to me, it's always good to see those guys have an opportunity to show what they can do, play that well, and to get recognized.
Yeah. Speaking of Ernest, like I remember seeing him when I went to Atlanta, and I was asking him his recruitment at that time. I think it was like late April or early May. And then he was telling me, I was like, man, this can't be real. Know. And so it's like you say, it's good that, someone that just came on late and he made the game and completely deservingly so, but it was just like, whoa, like,
right.
You know.
Always good to see that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good to see guys come on. It's good to see guys who don't make it kind of project as we thought they would, or like I knew that guy was going to be that good. It's just very interesting when the neck it's like he's just the number 6 pick of the draft, and wasn't that surprising? It was like, that's where he should have gone.
Especially that game. I remember that game. That was packed. And like you said, it was like Evan Mobley, they had Hunter Dickinson the other side, but Onyeka was just like
steady.
You know, rebound, blocking shots, just steady, just was really, really talented. Like just did a lot. He just did a lot. Like every time you watch him, he did a lot.
Yeah, I think it's funny. The winning basket was made by a guard named Justin Hill, but was going. I think he was tying with Tulsa, and he hit the game win, like the 3-pointer that put Compton Magic over the top. You just obviously Jared Lucas is at Oregon State, Johnny Juzang's at UCLA, but it's like in those games, that's how it happens, you know. And obviously, I think Hunter hurt his leg late in that game that hurt the team takeover. He didn't play the last 7 minutes of the game, but again, that's probably the best grassroots quote unquote grassroots game, single game setting in probably the last 5 to 7, 8, 10 years. I can't think of one that was better, where you had the talent level, the build up, the venue, the setting, where everybody was watching. So
Ronnie, man, what happened was the leagues happened. Right? You know, before the leagues, you always had that.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. And let's hope we can get more of those in the future. But I think for now, I think we covered it. You know, I appreciate you guys coming on. I wanted to let everybody know to make sure to check out ballslife.com for all of our podcasts, you know, Unapologetic, Buckets and Breakdowns, Noble and Roosh. Noble and Roosh does a really good job. Very popular. It's in the game. Make sure to, like, subscribe for our notifications. Let us know what you think. Your feedback's appreciated. You know, we had a lot of audio listeners last week, and when hopefully you guys listen to this one and start watching our video on YouTube on the Balls Life Podcast Network, we'll keep putting that out there. Want to remind people to go to the Balls Life store, log on to shop.ballslife.com. We have some specials going on, and starting next week, we're going to promo them. If you listen to this pod, there'll be some promo codes you can put in to start getting some discounts. So for Umana and Horace Neysmith, this is the Ball is Life in the Paint show, and we're going to sign off.
Thank you.